And so they confuse it. And so, getting back to something we were saying a little earlier, is that there's a lot of fake news out there.
Right.
All right?
Right.
There's a lot of news that's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And scientists who are basically in the fact business, all right, try to get their facts told through the media. And generally, it's pretty successful. It's really only special interests, all right, this. In particular, in the most conservative media
Mm-hmm.
and among very conservative politicians. Our president is a good example,
Mm.
all right? And so he definitely is not representing the scientific community,
No, not
our
at all.
president,
Not at all.
or the little people
Mm-hmm.
like you and I, Aaron. All right?
Right.
He is definitely a mouthpiece, all right,
Mm-hmm.
and an instrument and special interests. And that's just greed.
Right.
Greed, all right?
Right. And that's all it boils down to.
Yeah, that's. I think it's that simple,
Yeah.
all right? Because really our decision making about how we enter the 21st century and how we manage our economy, our communities, global ecology really should be guided by scientific
Sure.
facts,
Sure.
not special interests.
Right. I mean, science will tell us what we need to do. Special interests won't. It only serves those who will make money off of it, like you're saying, the greedy. So we do have to follow the scientists. I mean, when I see pictures of polar bears that are drowning because the ice shelves are shrinking, they're looking for food sources that have moved to colder waters because the water's warmed up too much.
Yes.
And deserts that are expanding. I don't understand how someone, special interest or not, cannot understand that they're destroying the planet that we live on. We only have one planet. And people like you are out there trying to tell the truth.
That's
so we
right.
can save it.
Yeah, like I always say, there's no planet B.
Right.
There's only planet A.
Right.
It's already had the changing climate due to global warming has already had a huge impact on ecosystems, both terrestrial ecosystems and marine ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is population.
Right.
There's 7.3 billion of us on the planet. And this planet was not designed for 7.3 billion.
What do you think the optimum population would be for the planet?
I myself think 3 billion would be perfect. Already past the point where we can probably provide enough resources, that means food and drinkable water, for everybody on the planet. All right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in the rearview mirror. And if we don't curb global population, all right, if we go to 10 billion, it's definitely way beyond sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more than just weaning ourselves off fossil fuel. All right. It's also weaning ourselves off large families. All right. In other words, cutting back on our population.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that might be the easiest.
Right.
One of the most important things we can do to stabilize global population is provide better educational and economic opportunities for women.
Yes.
All right? Essentially, women are not treated fairly on this planet. All right? So I'm going all the way back to my mom now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to say me too.
Right. Right.
Is that really what's best, all right?
Right.
All right, is to make better opportunities both educationally, all right, and economically for women.
That's one thing that I found out. I was a political science major in school, and I found out through some of my studies that when you educate the women, you educate the population. Because men are often either not there or they're out working. In a lot of countries, they're out at the farm all day. The women are at home still.
Yeah.
And you have second world, third world countries. They're still at home with the children. So they're the ones that are passing on the knowledge to all of the kids. And when you educate them, they can teach the children about the right way to sustain the planet, about not being wasteful and overusing resources and just doing the right thing.
Amen. No, that was well said, Aaron. All right, and so that and of course, and so I always say the big three in the short term. Mm-hmm. What's important right now? What's important 50 years from now? And what's important 100 years from now? 100 years from now, hopefully we will have weaned ourselves off fossil fuel and be in a renewable energy economy and stabilize the climate. 50 years from now, if we don't at least stabilize or decrease global population, there won't be enough resources. Mm-hmm. That means food and water on the planet. And of course, that will generate both economic and political instability across the planet. And in the near term, right now, mm-hmm. probably the largest existential threat to humanity is Donald.
I'm totally in agreement with that.
Yeah. Is that all the new rollbacks he's done on environmental regulation, as well as other things, all right, can undo all the good work that scientists and environmentalists and legislatures have done for the last 40 years. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, all right, all right, transferring from fossil fuels to renewable energies, all these very, very important things that will have such a powerful impact going out into the future, and as well as our common values,
right?
How we treat each other, all right? How we treat men, treat women, and vice versa. And so, in the short term, what this really means, the most important thing each and every one of us does, this is America.
Right.
If you want change, you have to legislate it. So the bottom line on this one is get out there and vote.
Right.
All right. A good example of how much damage can be done is the people, not the people that voted in the last election, but is the people that didn't vote. All right. So I want those millennials, all right, to stop walking around, all right, with their brains in their iPhones,
right,
and find out where the nearest voting booth is, because in the long term, how you vote is what really makes a difference.
Exactly. You don't know how many of these millennial friends that I've had that I've spoken to them, especially last election, they were like, oh, well, my vote is just one vote. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't count. And when you have hundreds of thousands and almost millions of young people that say that, that's damaging. That's the problem.
That's bad. That's a failure of the American education system. All right? Mm-hmm. That's extremely, self-involved, all right, and short-sighted.
Right. So if we make these changes, do you think we can still save the Earth? Do you think we can still turn back?
Well, you can't.
The damage.
You can't be walking around talking like the Grim Reaper all the time, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't get you anywhere. And so, but by my nature, I have to be positive. I have to be optimistic. All right, and of course that's easy for me because I don't have that much longer to go,
Oh, come on.
Come on, man. If I was 15, it might be different, right? But, you want to stay involved and you want to be on the side of the angels, all right? You don't want to go to the dark side. Mm-hmm. So the important thing I would say to young people is that stay away from the dark side, Become an environmental Jedi.
Right.
All right? Because there's a lot of positive things. And, of course, the great hope of the world, in spite of our president, still remains the United States of America.
Right.
All right? Mm-hmm. How the United States goes, all right, the rest of the world follows. And even cutting it better than that, how California goes is how the rest of the world goes, all right?
Right.
And so, we're doing a lot of very positive things here, environmentally, and in many ways here in California. All right, and so want people to be involved. Be involved, get out the vote. All right. And get those bums out of office,
right?
So we can get back on track,
right? Well, hopefully in November, some of that will start to change. If what happened the other night in Pennsylvania is any indication of where the country wants to go, it'll hopefully everybody else will follow that. And then once they start doing that in November, and like you said, vote the bums out, we can start making those positive changes slowly.
It was still pretty close, though.
Right.
It's amazing how America, how it's so close. All these elections, and so it could have gone the other way in the national election. This one was pretty close this week.
Right.
All right. So it really points out to the fact that less than 50% of Americans get out there and vote. And that's shameful.
Right, voter apathy. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah, and I know that old guys like me vote because don't touch my Social Security and Medicare.
Right.
What does that mean to a millennial?
Yeah, they don't understand that.
Yeah, they're brain dead. But we can wake them up. Right. That's what That's what the media is for. You have to tell these young people great stories.
Right.
Apparently, the stories they didn't get at home or in school.
Yeah.
All right. And because they are the great hope for the future.
Right. Well, it's not too late. I think we can still do something.
Right on, Aaron.
All right. Now, physics and baseball. All right. You were giving me a great anecdote about the World Series last year. And let's share that with the listeners. Now, you were stating which was better, a faster ball or a faster bat?
Oh, okay. That's a good question, all right? It's, physics is great because, everything that I've done in my career, it's really basically it's the math and the physics and working with the media to tell these stories. You can't beat the science, all right? Even Donald Trump can't beat the science. But I had a great phone call just before the World Series, the very sad World Series, But remember, it was a hot summer, and actually it was mostly a hot winter, too.
Right.
And so it was 100-degree time for the first two games in Dodger Stadium. And so Dodger Stadium is well known as a pitcher stadium.
Right.
Because in the late afternoon, usually the marine layer comes on shore. And so we get damp, cool air in Dodger Stadium. And it damps the baseball.
Right.
The cooler the air. And so generally it's known as a pitcher stadium. So some New York Times calls me and he says, well, it's going to be so hot. How do you think it'll change the game? And so I thought about it for a minute and I said, well, Dodger Stadium, commonly known as a pitcher stadium, all of a sudden is going to turn into a hitter stadium. Because after we left L.A., we went to Houston.
Right.
Where it was also hot. And so I said, I predicted that we would probably break the home run record for a World Series. All right. Before the series was finished. And of course, in all modesty, I was absolutely right. And so we had a lot of fun with that. Kevin Baxter here with the LA Times, he and I went back and forth on this. But then we did a little show with Neil deGrasse Tyson,
right,
where we were talking about physics and baseball, the science of baseball.
Right.
So we were talking about. So I asked Neil. I said, "What's more important, ball speed or bat speed?"
Right.
Well, your intuitive thing is to say that most important thing is that 105-mile-an-hour fastball. But, you know, the ball only weighs 4 ounces
Right.
going 100 miles an hour. But the bat weighs